So, you think owning a little hotel makes you better than us now? That was the first thing my father said to me when he walked through the lobby of my property. Not hello. Not I missed you. 7 years of silence, and that was his opening line. I kept my voice completely even. Welcome to the Aldrin. Do you have a reservation? He laughed. The kind of laugh that used to make me shrink when I was a teenager. A reservation. She's asking if we have a reservation. He turned to my mother and my brother Derek like I'd just told the funniest joke in the room. I hadn't seen any of them since I was 26 years old. Let me take you back, because you need to understand what kind of family I came from before you can understand what happened that night. I grew up in a house in Savannah, Georgia, where the rules were never written down, but everyone knew them anyway. My brother Derek was 4 years older than me, and from the time I could form a complete sentence, I understood that Derek came first. Derek's baseball games came first. Derek's college fund came first. Derek's future came first. I didn't resent him for it, at least not when I was young. I just accepted it as the way things were, the way you accept that the sky is blue or that summer in Georgia is suffocating. It was just the condition of life in our house. My mother had a saying she repeated so often I can still hear it in her voice: Derek carries the family name. As if my name didn't matter. As if I were borrowing space in that house rather than being raised in it. I worked hard in school because I figured out early that no one was going to hand me anything. I got good grades. I took AP classes. I stayed up past midnight studying, while Derek stayed out past midnight doing whatever Derek did, coming home smelling like beer and cigarettes, and my parents would just sigh and say, "Boys will be boys," and go back to sleep. By my senior year of high school, I had a 4.1 GPA, and I had applied to 6 colleges. My dream was the hospitality management program at the University of South Carolina. It was a respected program, one of the best in the Southeast, and I had worked toward it for 3 years specifically. I knew what I wanted. I wanted to run hotels. I had wanted it since I was 12 years old, and my family took a trip to a Marriott in Charleston, and I spent the entire weekend studying how everything worked instead of swimming in the pool. I got in, full acceptance. I came downstairs with the letter, and my mother hugged me and my father patted my shoulder and said he was proud of me, and for about 48 hours everything felt like it might actually be okay. Then, my father sat me down at the kitchen table. He told me that the money they had been setting aside, the account I had been told my entire childhood was my college fund, had been used. Derek had gotten into some financial trouble the previous year. Legal trouble, actually. Though my father glossed over that part quickly. The family had needed to pull resources together to handle it quietly. My college fund was gone. All of it. $42,000 that had been earmarked for my education had been used to clean up my brother's mess without anyone asking me, without anyone telling me, without anyone even acknowledging what they were taking. My father looked at me across that kitchen table and said, "You're smart, Maya. You'll figure something out." That was it. That was the whole conversation. I sat there for a long time after he got up and left the room. I remember the sound of the refrigerator humming. I remember the pattern on the tablecloth. I remember thinking that I should cry, but I couldn't find the tears anywhere. I just felt very still, and very clear, and very alone. I did figure something out. I deferred my enrollment for a year, worked 2 jobs, hostess at a steakhouse on River Street, barista at a coffee shop from 6 to 11 every morning, and saved enough to cover my first year's tuition with financial aid filling the rest. I did not ask my parents for anything. I did not ask Derek for anything. I simply put my head down and I worked. 4 years later, I graduated with a degree in hospitality management and a 3.8 GPA. I had done 3 internships. I had a job offer from a boutique hotel group in Atlanta. Before I even walked across the stage, my parents came to graduation. My mother cried a little. My father shook my hand. Derek didn't come because Derek had plans, and no one made a comment about that. I moved to Atlanta 2 weeks after graduation, and I did not look back. The next several years were not glamorous. I want to be honest about that because I have heard too many stories that skip over the hard middle part, the part where nothing is working yet and you don't know if it ever will. My hard middle part lasted about 4 years. I started as an assistant front desk manager at a boutique hotel in Midtown. I worked every shift nobody wanted. I covered for colleagues who called in sick. I learned the maintenance side of the business, the housekeeping side, the kitchen operation side. My manager at the time, a woman named Patricia Chen who had been in the industry for 30 years, told me once that the people who succeed in hospitality are the ones who understand that every single department is connected, that a leak under a bathroom sink can ruin a guest's anniversary trip and cost you a review that takes 6 months to recover from. I never forgot that. I got promoted twice in 3 years. I moved to a regional management role. I started building relationships with property developers who were looking for operators. Then I met Owen Bradshaw. Owen was a real estate attorney who specialized in commercial property. We met at an industry conference in Charlotte and became friends before we became anything else. He was the kind of person who explained complicated things simply and never made you feel foolish for not already knowing them. He introduced me to the concept of small hotel acquisitions, distressed properties that could be repositioned with the right operator attached. He helped me understand how to structure deals, how to read a property's financial history, how to negotiate with banks. The first property I acquired was a struggling 12-room inn outside of Athens, Georgia. I used every dollar I had saved plus a small business loan, and I spent 14 months rebuilding it from the interior design to the staff culture to the brand identity. Within 2 years, it was profitable. I sold it for a return that let me move up to something larger. I did that twice more. Each time I learned something new. Each time I moved up. By the time I was 33, I owned the Aldrin. The Aldrin was a 38-room boutique hotel in downtown Savannah. Historic building, 4-diamond service standard, a rooftop bar with a view of the river that guests photographed constantly. It had been a troubled property before I acquired it. Mismanaged, under-renovated, bleeding money. I spent 18 months turning it around. By the time it hit its second year under my ownership, it had a waiting list for weekend reservations from October through January. I had come back to Savannah not because of my family. I came back because the property was right and the market was right, and Savannah was a city I understood. I had not contacted my family when I moved back. I had been back for nearly 2 years and they apparently had no idea I was there, or if they did, they said nothing. Until the night they walked through my front door. It was a Friday in November. We had a full house, a rehearsal dinner in the private dining room, and a corporate buyout of the rooftop for a firm's client appreciation event. My front desk manager Celia called me from the lobby at 7:45 and said there was a party of 4 asking to speak with the manager about a suite upgrade. Something in her voice told me it was more complicated than a routine request. I came downstairs and there they were. My father, my mother, Derek, and a woman I didn't recognize who turned out to be Derek's wife, Cassandra. They were dressed up. My father in a blazer. My mother in a dress she had clearly bought recently, Derek in a collared shirt that still had the fold lines from the packaging. They looked like they were performing the idea of arriving somewhere nice. My father was the one who saw me first, and instead of the shock I might have expected, instead of any kind of acknowledgement of what it meant that 7 years had passed, he just looked at me with that expression I had known my whole life, the one that said he was already slightly disappointed, and said what he said. "So you think owning a little hotel makes you better than us now?" I heard Celia go very quiet beside me. I took a breath, kept my face neutral and said, "Welcome to the Aldrin. Do you have a reservation?" My mother stepped forward. She had the look she always got when she wanted something. Soft eyes, slight smile, the performance of warmth. "Maya, sweetheart, we didn't know this was your place. We just thought. Derek's firm is having their dinner here tonight. On the rooftop? He's being recognized. We came to support him." I looked at Derek. He met my eyes for exactly 1 second and then looked away. "I can check the guest list for the corporate event," I said. "What's the name on the reservation?" Derek cleared his throat. "Hollis Group. Table for 4 added under my name, Derek Lawson." I smiled the way you smile at a guest you have never met. "Give me just a moment." I stepped behind the desk, checked the list. Derek's name was there. 1 seat, not 4. He had added himself to a client event he apparently had no authority over and had brought 3 additional people without authorization. I came back. I'm showing one confirmed seat under your name for the Hollis Group event. I don't have the other 3 on the list. The rooftop is a private buyout tonight, so I'm not able to add walk-in guests without authorization from the host company. Derek's jaw tightened. Can you just call up there and get it sorted? I can reach out to the event coordinator, I said. But I want to be upfront with you that a full buyout means the host company controls the guest list entirely. It's not something I can override. My father had been quiet for about 45 seconds, which was longer than I expected. Now he stepped forward. Maya. He said my name the way he always said it when he thought I was being unnecessarily difficult. We drove 3 hours. Your mother isn't well. She's been exhausted and we would like to sit down somewhere comfortable. Surely you can find a table for us in the restaurant while Derek handles the business thing upstairs. Of course, I said. The dining room has availability. I can seat you right now. I thought that might be the end of it. I had Celia show them to a table near the window, the second best table in the room because I was raised to be professional even when I had every reason not to be. I sent over a complimentary bread course. I went back to managing the rest of the evening. 30 minutes later, Celia found me in the hallway outside the kitchen. She looked uncomfortable. They're asking to see you again, she said. My father was sitting with his arms crossed when I came to the table. My mother was picking at a bread roll. Derek's wife Cassandra was studying her phone. Derek himself had apparently gone upstairs to the rooftop event, which told me everything I needed to know about why the family was really there. Sit down, my father said. I remained standing. Is there something I can help you with? You can help us by acting like a daughter instead of a hotel employee, he said. Sit down. I'm working, I said pleasantly. If there's an issue with your table or your service, I'm happy to address it. My mother reached out and touched my wrist. We just want to talk, baby. We've missed you. 7 years, not a single phone call, not a text when I graduated from the management program I had paid for entirely by myself. Not a word when I sold my first property. Not anything. And now, sitting at a table in my restaurant, she had missed me. I kept my expression neutral. My father unfolded his arms and leaned forward. Derek is being made a partner at Hollis Group next month. Do you know what that means for this family? I said nothing. It means we're moving into a different position, he said. Socially, professionally. We need to present ourselves appropriately. Derek and Cassandra are looking at a house in Ardsley Park, a real house. He paused to let that land. We need some help bridging the gap. There it was. What kind of help? I asked. A loan, my mother said quickly, like she'd been waiting to deliver her line. Just to help with the down payment. Derek's partnership bonus comes in 6 months. It would all be paid back by then. How much? I said. My father named a number. $60,000. I let the silence sit for a moment. Outside the window, a couple was walking along the river, the woman laughing at something, the man reaching for her hand. I watched them for just a second. I don't think that's something I'm able to do, I said. My father's expression shifted. You own a hotel, Maya. Don't tell me you don't have $60,000. What I have or don't have isn't really the point, I said. Then what is the point? I looked at him steadily. The point is that the last significant financial transaction between our family and me involved $42,000 from my college fund being used without my knowledge or consent. I built everything I have since then entirely on my own, without any support from this family. So when you asked me to loan $60,000 for Derek's house, I think you can understand why the answer is no. My father's face went red. My mother pressed her lips together. Cassandra had stopped looking at her phone. That was years ago, my father said. You've clearly done fine. I've done fine because I chose to, I said. Not because of anything that came from this table. He leaned forward. His voice dropped to the register it used to drop to when I was in trouble as a child, the one designed to make me feel small. You want to talk about choices. You chose to cut off your family. You moved back to the city and didn't say a word to us. You've been here, 2 years? And we had to find out from a colleague of Derek's that our own daughter owns a property downtown. How do you think that feels? I imagine it feels something like finding out your college fund had been emptied without anyone telling you, I said. He sat back. His jaw was tight. We're your family, my mother said softly. Family helps each other. Family does help each other. I agreed. I believe that completely. There was a pause. Then my father picked up the bread basket, set it to the side like he was clearing space, and placed both hands flat on the table. Maya, I'm going to be straightforward with you. Derek's firm has a relationship with the property group that manages the lease for this building. I happen to know the senior partner there personally. It would be very easy for a concern to be raised about the current operator's suitability at renewal time. I looked at him. Lease renewals are discretionary, he continued. I'm just saying that as someone who cares about your success here, you should think carefully about what relationships matter. He held my gaze the way he always did when he thought he had leverage. I took a breath through my nose. I thought about Celia at the front desk. I thought about my housekeeping supervisor Gloria, who had worked for me since the first month I opened and sent her grandchildren pictures of the rooftop every Christmas. I thought about the 14-hour days I had put in during the first year of this property, the corners I had refused to cut, the reviews I had earned one guest at a time. Then I said, "Dad, who do you think owns this building?" He blinked. "The property," I said. "The actual building that the Aldrin operates in. Do you know who holds the deed?" He said nothing. "I do," I said. "I acquired the commercial property and the hotel operation as a combined asset 18 months ago. There is no separate landlord. There is no separate landlord. There is no lease to threaten. I own the building outright." The color in his face changed. "The property group you're referring to managed this building under the previous owner," I continued. "They have no current relationship with this property. If Derek's firm has a contact there, that contact has nothing to do with me." My mother had gone very still. "So when you say it would be easy to raise a concern at renewal time," I said, "there is no renewal. There is no leverage. There's nothing to threaten." I kept my voice completely even the whole time. I was not angry. I want to be clear about that. What I felt in that moment was not anger. It was something quieter and more final than anger. It was the feeling of something being fully completed. My father opened his mouth, closed it. Derek came downstairs from the rooftop event at that exact moment, saw the expression on everyone's faces, and said, "What happened?" Nobody answered him. I straightened my jacket. "I'm going to have Celia bring your check over. Your meals tonight are on the house, because that's how I run this property. Every guest receives my hospitality regardless of the circumstances. But I want to be clear that this is a professional courtesy and nothing more." I paused. "I hope Derek's partnership goes well," I said. "And I meant it. I genuinely do. I don't wish any of you harm. But I also won't be providing a loan, and I won't be available for conversations like this one in the future." I looked at my mother last because she was the one I had loved most, and therefore the one whose choices had cost me the most. "I'm glad you came tonight actually," I said quietly. I needed to see that I wasn't afraid of this anymore. I walked back to the front desk. Celia looked at me with wide eyes. "Everything okay?" she asked. "Everything's fine," I said. "Table 7 will be checking out in a few minutes. Please make sure their coats are retrieved from the coat check promptly." She nodded. I picked up the evening's event report and continued working. They left 20 minutes later. My father walked out first, quickly without looking at the front desk. My mother paused at the door. I saw her from my peripheral vision, and I think she may have looked back. But I had turned to speak to a guest, and by the time I looked again, she was gone. Derek stopped at the desk. "Maya," he said. I looked at him. He had aged in 7 years. There were lines around his eyes that hadn't been there before. He looked like someone who had spent a long time being the favorite and had recently begun to understand that favorites aren't protected from consequences, just delayed from them. "I didn't know he was going to do that," he said. "The thing about the lease." I studied him for a moment. I thought about the baseball games, the college fund, the 14 months I worked 2 jobs before I was 20 years old to pay for something that had already been mine. "I know," I said. Because I did know. Derek had always been the instrument, never the architect. That had been true his whole life. "I'm sorry," he said, "for what it's worth." It was worth something. Not $60,000, not 7 years, not the version of our childhood that could have been different. But something. Good luck with the partnership, I said. He nodded once and walked out. I have been asked since then, by friends, by people who know the story, whether I feel like I won something that night. Whether it felt like revenge, like the universe finally balancing the books. Honestly, it didn't feel like winning. It felt like finally being in a room where the air pressure was the same on all sides. No weight I hadn't agreed to carry. No debt I hadn't chosen to owe. Just the even, quiet feeling of standing on ground I had built myself and not being moved. I still live in Savannah. The Aldrin is doing well. We were recognized last spring by a regional hospitality publication, which I hung in the employee break room rather than the lobby, because the people who deserved the credit were the ones who'd see it there. I think about my family sometimes the way you think about weather from years ago, not with anger, not even with sadness anymore. More like you think about a very long winter that eventually ended and taught you, in the ending, that you had been warm-blooded all along. I built this life without a safety net, and without a map, and without anyone at a kitchen table telling me I was worth investing in. I built it anyway. That's the only story I know how to tell, and it's the only one I need. I've had a lot of time to think about what that night in the lobby actually meant. Not the part where my father's face changed color when I told him I owned the building. Though I'd be lying if I said there wasn't something clarifying about that moment. I mean the part before it. The part where he sat across from me and genuinely believed that a threat would work. That after 7 years, after everything, I would still fold the same way I did at that kitchen table in Savannah when I was 22 years old, and he slid my future away from me without blinking. He didn't know who I had become because he had never been paying attention to who I was. That's the thing about people who take from you early. They freeze you in place in their minds. They keep seeing the version of you that needed them, the version that could be managed. The version that hadn't yet learned what it cost them nothing to withhold. My father walked into the Aldrin that Friday night still carrying a picture of a girl who could be pressured. He didn't realize the picture was 20 years old. I don't think he's a monster. I want to be careful about that, because it would be easy to tell this story that way, and it would also be dishonest. He's a man who made choices, consistent, repeated, deliberate choices, to value one child's future over another's, and then lived long enough to watch the math catch up with him. That's not supernatural, that's just cause and effect playing out at the pace it always does, which is slower than you want when you're young and absorbing the damage, and faster than the other person expects when the bill finally arrives. What I know about building something real, a business, a life, a sense of yourself that doesn't require anyone else's approval to stay upright, is that it happens in the gap between what was taken from you and what you decide to do next. That gap is uncomfortable. It lasts longer than it should. There were years in my 20s when I was working double shifts and eating cereal for dinner and genuinely not sure the direction I was walking led anywhere. Trisha Chen, my first real mentor, told me once that the difference between people who make it and people who don't is almost never talent. It's the willingness to stay in the room when the room is unglamorous. To keep learning when no one is watching. To treat your own development as the most serious investment you will ever make. Because it is the only one no one can liquidate without your permission. I kept that with me. Not as a motivational phrase, as a practical instruction. Every time I wanted to cut a corner, every time exhaustion made dishonesty feel reasonable, every time I could have treated a guest or an employee as less than they deserved, I came back to the understanding that the person I was building was going to have to live in every room I created. I wanted to be able to live in those rooms. Derek said he was sorry before he walked out. I believed him. Sorrow is easy to come by when the consequences have already arrived. What's harder, what actually costs something, is the choice you make before the consequences show up. When being honest or being fair or being generous requires something from you that no one will ever see you give. That's where character actually lives. Not in the apology, in the decision that makes the apology unnecessary. I didn't heal that night. That's not how it works. But I did close something. And sometimes closing something is enough to let you breathe all the way in for the first time in a very long while.